What's going on, everybody? This is live stream 53, and the topic of the hour is: are shotguns, submachine guns, and pistol caliber carbines legitimate and relevant on the modern day? And we're going to talk both about military and civilian use. So try to throw that caveat on there. So going around the horn, introducing my panelists tonight. First and foremost, we got the good Bruce at Camp Armament. That's his YouTube channel and Instagram handle. Make sure to check it out. Bruce is my right-hand man here on YouTube. Hard pressed to see videos of me without him in it. And he was a former aircraft mechanic, and he's also an armorer, and always brings that excellent civilian perspective to the chat. So, Bruce, thanks for jumping on tonight, brother.
Thanks for having me on, Brent.
All right. Next, we got Pegasus Test, a.k.a. Les. He's a logistics expert. He has his own logistics company. Usually he's rocking and sporting that pimp Polaris logistics polo, but apparently he's going without it tonight. So
incognito tonight, man.
Yeah. It's going great, man, literally. So anyways, Les is he's a Marine that served in the Gulf War in the early 90s, and he owns his own tactical training company called Polaris and Tactics and Simulations Division. And yeah, be sure to check out his YouTube channel called Pegasus Test. Thanks for jumping on tonight, Les.
Glad to be here, Brent.
All right. Next panelist tonight, we got Jared with 2 Alpha Solutions. That is his YouTube channel. Be sure to check it out.
Guys.
Jared was my competition in the SEER Challenge that's going on right now over at the Grunt Proof channel. Be sure to check it out. But Jared served in the United States Navy, and he has his own tactical training company also. So, Jared, thanks for jumping on tonight.
Appreciate it, bro.
And then also, who is having some technical difficulties, so hopefully we can get him in here tonight. But we got Uniform Tango 74. He's a buddy of mine, goes way back. He's a native of DFW. So, again, hopefully we can get him in here. And when he jumps in, if he jumps in, I'll introduce him at that point. So, again, our topic tonight, live stream 53, are shotguns, submachine guns, and pistol caliber carbines still relevant on the modern day battlefield and home defense for military and civilian use. So I'm going to kick it over to our starting pitcher. Les, you got the con, brother.
Hoorah. All right. So last week we talked about the relevance of what weapons you use and what member of the team, you know, the rifle, the saw, and all that good stuff. And this week we're talking about a different subset of weapons. These are all military viable weapons. They have been since they were first introduced into the military lexicon, and their viability is still there. Not in the same way they were originally introduced, but they're still relevant nonetheless. Started off the shotgun. It's the oldest weapon on our list tonight. Its first battlefield debut in mass numbers was in the First World War by the American Expeditionary Force. And depending on what source you read, it was the reaper of the trenches. It was just blasting Germans out left and right, or it didn't work at all and didn't function in the mud. You'll find stories of both, and where the truth lies must be somewhere in between. It was definitely a psychological weapon. The Germans were very, very upset by it and considered it a war crime to be shot with a shotgun. And hence why in the modern Geneva Convention, you can totally level a 155 howitzer at somebody with beehive rounds and blow them apart, no problem. And if you're not an MP, shooting with somebody with a shotgun is technically a war crime. It's mainly used by police forces where it still has major relevance, although that is starting to slip. Be that as it may, it's also a uniquely American weapon. Police forces and military forces around the world absolutely do use shotguns, and it would be remiss to say that they don't. But nowhere is it more pronounced than in the American military, where it is widespread, used by all 5 armed services, and is going to be for the near future. All basic developments, military in the shotgun, is coming out of the American experience. With other countries just copycatting and glomming onto it for their specific purposes. In a military context, who should have the shotgun? That depends on the unit. It's got a place, and it depends what that unit does. Should it be assigned to someone as their primary weapon? Again, depends on the unit. If I was saying mainline grunt units, no, not at all. It should be a supplementary weapon for special tasks, i.e. breaching doors or clearing rooms or something like that. MPs, sure, why not? It can definitely be an MP weapon as a main primary issue weapon, and definitely has a role as a support weapon for rear echelon troops, combat service support troops, and whatnot. For the armed prepared citizen, is the shotgun relevant? Abso-freaking-lutely. One of the things the shotgun can do is feed you. In a survival situation, a shotgun, depending on your choice of ammunition, can kill anything on the North American continent, all the way up to polar bears. Not recommended as a first choice, but it'll get the job done. So the shotgun can feed you. Also, the advantage it brings to the fight when compared to a handgun, it has the exact same range limitations unless you're using slugs, but what it does over that range is deliver much more devastating firepower. So shotguns are still very relevant, and for the military, they will be relevant as far as in the future as I can see. And as a civilian, they have great relevancy because, like I said, they can feed you, they can defend you, and politically, they're going to be the last of the type of weapons to be banned. And with that, I'll turn it over to next in line.
Those are all great points, Les. Yeah, I think that one of the things Les sort of brings up is speaking about militaries, right? Well, when you think about it, there's really no military that's solely armed with the shotgun. There's no military unit that goes out with a squad of 6 or 12 shotguns to engage the enemy. That's just not the way that it's used. And the reason for that is because these weapons we're talking about, shotguns, submachine guns, PCCs, all fall into the category of being what I would call niche weapons, right? They can be effective in a very specific role. And can be useful for a very specific type of target, but they don't cover the broad ranges that a rifle would, whereas a rifle can engage targets from 0 to 600-700 meters fairly regularly and fairly accurately. You cannot say that about submachine guns, shotguns, or pistol caliber carbines. So what we'll be talking about, I assume tonight, are how these will be used in these sort of very specific type target or environment areas. And one of the things that Les mentioned, and I'm going to add to it, is where he talked about using a shotgun in sort of like a survival situation, right? Where you've got you can hunt with it. You don't just have to use it for personal defense, but it can be much more than that. And if you guys go back, there's a guy named Dave Canterbury. Dave Canterbury's done several videos on this years ago, where he took a single shot shotgun. And of course, with double lock buck, it would be great for two-legged targets and for hunting larger game. But he also went into showing how if you're in a wilderness situation where you don't necessarily have access to ammunition, you could take an empty shotgun shell, you could carry a box, you could have primers, and you could essentially make a muzzle loader out of this and use it having nothing but a little bit of powder and a primer, and loading it with whatever you find down the bore, whether it be rocks or screws or whatever the case may be. And he did some testing showing how effective that could be, particularly when using it to hunt small game. And he had many cartridges that he had reloaded over and over and over many times without really needing any tools that he would do out in the field. And so that's maybe a consideration for someone that's like really concerned about not having the availability of having ammunition readily available, that's something that it brings to the table that you most certainly can't really do with, say, a rifle. So I would say there are some pros to something like a shotgun. I myself have a shotgun for home defense, and it took me kind of a long time to really warm up to that. But the truth is, the area that I'm in, and given the capabilities that I've found with that shotgun, where I've actually tested it, it's a Benelli. It's got a choke capable barrel. I think the barrel is not that long. It's like 18 inches, but it's choke capable. And I started doing some testing with this against human silhouette targets, paper targets. out to 100 yards. And even at 100 yards with that shotgun, I could fire one shot of double lock buck, 9 pellet, regular stuff you buy anywhere, nothing special. And I was getting on average 2 hits on that silhouette. 2 of those buckshot pellets were hitting at 100 yards. And that was really impressive to me because on the one hand, I couldn't fire that at 100 yards if there were other individuals around that target. But if that target was out on its own or there was only bad guys downrange, being able to shoot out to 100 yards in a personal defense situation, that covers a lot of bases for a lot of people. And of course, as Les mentioned, with there being a target up closer, say inside your home or within a short distance, 25, 30 yards of where you're standing, something like buckshot is going to be absolutely devastating. So that's one of the considerations that I have for being able to grab a shotgun. It's got a light on it, got a low light optic on it, and I'm ready to go to work. There are limitations, and I've taken enough time now. I'm going to let the other guys speak, but we'll come back and maybe speak on those limitations a little bit more.
All right. So shotguns, I think they're a really good tool to have. I don't think they're the be all end all by any means. But like Bruce said, you can be effective with them out to 100 yards if need be and under the right conditions. The shotgun that I have, it's a Remington 870 tactical, just bare bones. And I regularly shoot that at 25, 50 yards and shooting slugs and double aught buck, and it's super effective at those ranges. When I was in law enforcement, one of the departments I worked for, we had Remington 870s with old wood stocks, and they took me out to the car when I first got hired and said, "This is your car," and gave me the shotgun that was in the back, and I pulled it out of the bag, and the stock was all mildewed and just everything was rusted up, and I handed it right back to him and said, "This isn't any good." So in a law enforcement capacity, if they don't take care of them, obviously it's no good. And I think they ended up scrapping that one. Never deployed or anything with a shotgun in law enforcement. An AR I have, not used, just deployed for show of force. 50 yards for law enforcement with a shotgun is a no-go. You're not going to do it. That is something you're going to take out when a burglar's trying to break into a house and you're sneaking around the corner looking for them, and hopefully you have a tack light on it. But shotguns are definitely, they can be absolutely devastating in the right circumstances.
All right. So no uniform Tango 74 just yet. Hopefully he can still get in here, but I'll jump on here. So obviously, if you guys haven't figured out, we're going in order. All right. We'll start with shotguns, then we'll go to submachine guns, and then we'll go to pistol caliber carbines. So my opinion is shotguns. Yes, shotguns are absolutely freaking devastating, and they are badass and a lot of fun to shoot. If somebody breaks into my house in the middle of the night or during the day, it don't matter. In my little personal gun safe right next to each other is a 12 gauge shotgun and an AR. Right. So it's like, just like a woman's shoe closet, it's like I've got 2 different weapons for 2 different needs. So if I look out my window and I see Chi-Com paratroopers falling out of the sky, I'm going to grab my AR. Right. But if I hear a bump in the middle of the night, I'm probably going to grab my shotgun. Okay. I also have 2 small children in the house. And last thing I need to worry about is 5.56 going through, my kid's freaking bedroom wall. Not to say that I'm not going to grab an AR if I hear a bump in the night, but situation sometimes dictates that. So I do think shotguns are absolutely still viable for home defense. They are one of the most viable options you can have, and that's why I still have one in my house. Right? It's just a devastating close quarters combat weapon. Now, discriminating against targets, with a shotgun. Well, there's some issue with there. You're not shooting one round, you're shooting several. Okay. So that's something to take into consideration as well. How did shotguns kind of come out of favor with law enforcement? Well, let me bring this picture up. This is from a movie based on a real situation. It was a North Hollywood shootout in the early 90s. And officers absolutely got their asses handed to them in this situation. Just two guys armed with fully automatic rifles robbed a bank and were, met by law enforcement out in a parking lot, and a shootout ensued. And the officers essentially only had pistols and shotguns and were just getting outgunned. And somehow, some way, nobody actually died from that other than the assailants in the end. But the officers were absolutely outgunned. And literally, they had to go into a nearby gun store to get AR-15s to be able to subdue this threat. So, shotguns are outclassed given certain situations. So, home defense, absolutely. 12-gauge shotgun, absolutely viable. Out on the streets, not so much, in my opinion. Okay? It shouldn't be a primary. I think shotguns are relevant in law enforcement and military applications when you're talking about breaching and things of that nature. But when you start pushing that range out a little bit, they start going down in effectiveness. And also when you're talking about target discrimination and you're accountable for every round that you fire, there's a potential issue there. But home defense, middle of the night, I can't think of a better weapon system than to grab a 12-gauge shotgun to fucking put some buckshot into somebody's ass. So, all right. Anybody got any save rounds over shotguns?
Yeah.
According to our inglorious bastard of a president, that's all we need is a shotgun.
Oh yeah. Hey, actually, I do have a save round. Sorry. 1 second. I got to pull something up because this is absolutely viable. And it is important to note that shotguns are still relevant in that application. When you've dug a spider hole and there's a communist running towards you and you pop up within 10 meters or so, and you can blast them with your 12-gauge that's sawed off.
Yes, the relevance of that cannot be disputed.
Carry on.
And for that, we should all have a shotgun for that reason alone.
Or executions, right? Because you never heard of the Geneva Convention.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't apply to civilians. One of the things when you're talking about shotguns, you have to talk about ammunition and what it does. So birdshot will feed you. It'll kill your small birds and game. And close up, it is very devastating. Go look at a target at 7 meters. It's just absolutely covered. I would not want to be hit by that round at that. And surprisingly, I did a test several years ago. One of the very first videos I posted on my channel was about suppression of targets at 100 meters with birdshot. And while firing at cardboard IPSC targets, very few of the pellets even penetrated the cardboard. So a heavy leather jacket would have been great armor for you. But one of the things I learned from this test was if I'm at 100 meters away and there's a couple guys just pumping round after round of birdshot at me, no matter where I go, I'm getting pelted by these pellets. That's probably going to dampen my enthusiasm for closing with the enemy because it's only going to get worse the closer I get. So birdshot has a relevance even at distance. It's just not going to get the effects you think you're going to get out of it. Obviously, buckshot, you're essentially not directly compatible, but essentially every buckshot round you send out, you're sending out 9 pellet equivalents of 9mm at your bad guy. And if you use quality ammo in a decent shotgun, I've generally found you can keep all 9 pallets on the target up to about 20 to 25 meters. After that, the spread starts getting wider than a human body. And then you run into the potential that every single pellet you launch has a lawyer attached to it. And then like Brent said earlier, target discrimination gets really tricky at that point. But chances are, if you hit a target, you're going to be hitting him with multiple rounds. So your shotgun is going to do the equivalent at 25 meters as putting 9 rounds of 9mm into somebody. And that's definitely going to ruin their day. Unlike our action hero movies, our hero's not going to get up from that and then come over and kick your ass. Other rounds to consider are your slugs. Slugs definitely increase your range with a shotgun, and depending on your shotgun sighting system will be how much range you get. For example, in just a bead front sight on my 870, 50 yards is about the max with slugs where I can reliably put it on a target. However, on my Mossberg 590 with ghost ring sights on it that has the same sight pictures as an M16, I can reliably hit a target at nearly 150 meters. So those are some of the variables you count. And then there's all the specialty loads that go in there. You have beanbag rounds, you have tear gas rounds, you have even dragon's breath, you have breaching rounds. And of course, as an armed prepared citizen, depending on what you intend to do with your shotgun, means what rounds you have to go get. And with that, I'll turn it over to someone else.
Yeah, I just chime in with Les there that he stole a little bit of my thunder talking about the different types of rounds available for a shotgun, but he's absolutely right. I mean, that's one of the things that a shotgun has that a regular rifle doesn't, is a multitude of different types of ammunition that can be specific to whatever target that you've got. Something that wasn't mentioned, but I think is probably worth talking about today is drones, right? I'm not sure how effective a shotgun would be against a drone, but if it's effective against a duck, I imagine it'd be pretty effective against a drone that's made out of plastic and is dependent on propellers to keep it airborne. So that might be something worth considering. I don't know what your specific situation is. And for those of you that are wondering about the effectiveness of a shotgun, the real effectiveness and not the sort of Hollywood hype, there's a couple of directions I can send you. One is the great Paul Harrell. If you're not subscribed to Paul Harrell on YouTube, you should be. He's a very real, down-to-earth guy. His videos are not fancy or sparkly or shiny, but there's a lot of great information there. And he's built walls and fired shotguns through walls and done all kinds of testing with shotguns and rifles that is fairly good testing. You know, there's stuff that, you know, you'll take something from and learn something from. So learning about how effective buckshot is through a home wall and things of that nature. Check out Paul Harrell if you haven't done that. The shotgun ammo that's available out there. This is all stuff that's you're not going to be able to get after the fact, right? You're going to need to have it now. You're going to need to have it in store now and be able to use it right now today. So I would say, you know, if you're going to have a shotgun, think about what situations you may be running into it, whatever use you're going to be using it for, whatever situation you're going to be in, and make sure that you've got that ahead of time. And I think that something like 12 gauge is so common, and even 12 gauge buckshot so common, that if you're in a situation sort of like Brent posted, the Red Dawn situation, where you've got this group of guys and you're out there and you're kind of pillaging and taking the equipment that you can as you go, 12 gauge ammo is probably always going to be available. Oh, and my other point was, if you want to see how effective 12 gauge ammo is, there's tons of videos out there of cops coming up onto someone at, say, a traffic stop, and the person's acting squirrely, and the police officer fires a round of 12 gauge buck into them. The story ends the same every time. They drop like a sack of potatoes, and they typically don't get up and run their mouth anymore. It is absolutely devastating at close range if you don't have armor to protect yourself from it. And there are plenty of interviews also you can look up of surgeons who have had victims brought in that were the victims of buckshot at close range, and there's just no fixing them. There's just too many holes. There's too much damage to usually stop the bleeding before the person's dead, if they arrive alive at all. There's a lot of argument. Rifles can be extremely effective and do the same thing too. But taking the trauma to your body of 8 or 9 shots at once, it's a system overload for your nervous system, and it's usually game over if you're within close range.
You know, and speaking of armor for shotguns, when I was in one of the police academies, we had some soft armor that was outdated and everything. So they put it on a plastic 55-gallon barrel, and we shot it a couple times with slugs. I don't know if we used double wad or anything else, but the slug flattened way out, never penetrated the armor, but the shock wave going through into the body is going to kill you almost instantly anyhow. Even though the slug doesn't even penetrate the armor, just the shock of it hitting you, that 1 ounce ball of lead.
Yeah, I agree with that because it was a year or two ago, I did some ballistic testing on some body armor that I got sent, and I blasted it with a shotgun. Same thing, like the the shit I had behind the armor to like prop it up was just annihilated.
Yeah, it just obliterates it.
Yeah. So yes, it stopped it, but the freaking force behind getting hit with that is just it's gonna break every freaking rib in your body.
Yeah, it's gonna pulverize your sternum and your ribs and everything there.
All right, we got any? Well, so let's think about. So obviously, shotguns were pretty useful in World War I with trench fighting. But would there be a use for them, let's say, on the battlefields of Ukraine, for instance? Right now, Bruce already mentioned UAVs. Shotguns definitely come in play on UAVs if they're flying low enough. I say the problem that you're going to encounter is when they're too high for shotguns, right? Because cameras can zoom in. Obviously, the higher the UAV, the less quality the vision is, despite being able to zoom in some.
Well, that's one effect right there. If just having shotguns can force the flight envelope of the UAV to change, right there, that's a victory.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're definitely, I could see a need for that. But what about trench clearing? Would you?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't it still be valid? Trenches have not changed.
Yeah.
It's just like saying, ooh, that 1940s duckbill camouflage the Marines still works. Oh, no kidding. Forests haven't changed. Trends haven't changed.
Well, I think about there's a video on it. I don't know who's who. I don't know who the Ukrainians are, and I don't know who the Russians are. And I'm sure you guys have seen the same video. But the trench is, kind of comes to like a T intersection. And there's one guy on one side, at the T intersection, and then there's like two guys coming down it. And, I mean, they're freaking point blank, shooting at each other. And it's like, that's absolutely shotgun range right there. Problem is, if you're by yourself and you expend all shells, well, it's going to take you a second to get another shell or shells back in the fight there. So,
well, that's a segue. That's why one of my philosophies with the shotgun is you have to have a pistol. No matter what shotgun I've practiced with, be it double barrels, pump shotguns, even one that has high capacity like a KSG, you cannot reload it quickly. You just simply cannot. So you have to be good at transitions and have a reliable sidearm, preferably one with a high capacity magazine to switch to when that gun goes empty. And not only that, with your shotgun, if you're expending rounds and there's a lull, you're reloading. If you're not reloading, you're wrong, because that's the only way you can keep your shotgun in the fight.
Even if you only have to reload one shell.
Exactly.
Keep it full.
And I have found in multiple competitions and in training that many times once you've expended the shotgun's magazine, you actually are faster single loading. Just throw one in, rack it, get a shot off, keep doing that until you can create a lull. I have found that that's been a lot of times a heck of a lot more faster, especially in competition, than stopping, filling the tube back up, and then continuing the fight. Another thing that we haven't touched on, but was really important with your shotgun, is understanding your pattern, which is just like zeroing your rifle. You have to know what your shotgun does with that brand of ammunition. And that's very important, because I can tell you, one of my 870s and my Mossberg 590s, you can put the same ammo in and get two completely different patterns.
Yeah, and that's particularly important if you're trying to shoot at distance and at range as well, because that the farther out you go, the more your pattern's going to vary from one shotgun to the other.
No, absolutely.
Is there any footage in Ukraine of shotguns being utilized?
Not to my knowledge, but they have to be there. I mean, I think it's universally accepted that as a breaching tool, shotgun is what you use for ballistic breach. So I'm sure they have some of them. And that goes to your question earlier, Brent. Is it relevant? Yeah, because as Ukraine starts to retake territory, they will end up house clearing. So there's doors that will have to be breached. There'll be rooms that will have to be cleared. So it will have a role there for sure.
One other thing that I wanted to talk about that Brent got me thinking about was this like Ukraine situation. And the more I watch on that, the more I'm amazed at how much the terrain looks just like it does here in Central Texas. You've got huge fields that are separated by small, thin tree lines. And a lot of times those trenches are dug right into the tree line so that the trees give them some level of concealment from whatever's looking up in the sky, which would be drones, typically speaking. But for that guy to make it to that trench line with the shotgun, he's got to cross open fields a lot of times first. And that's where a shotgun would be at a huge disadvantage compared to a rifle. These are just considerations that we have to think about, because Ukraine and North Texas, for that matter, would offer with the same terrain, long open fields, not going to be good for a shotgun. Trenches, great for a shotgun, but you're handing off one great benefit for another liability with that system, which is why I do think that Ukrainians, Russians, it's not that they don't have access to shotguns. They certainly do, but they typically are choosing rifles, and there's probably a reason why.
Well, it's a specialty weapon for sure, but it shows how a unit has to work in a combined arms situation. You have to have the gun teams laying down the fire. You have guys with AKs providing that distant shot so those guys with the shotguns can get into the trench, establish the foothold, and feed other troops into it. So it's just like everything. Are 40 millimeter grenade launchers relevant? Hell yeah. Do we give one to everybody? No, we don't. Are saws relevant? Hell yeah. Does everybody get one? No, they don't. And the shotgun would be the exact same way.
Yeah, I'm gonna highlight this comment right here. This guy says, Vietnam, I carried an M79 and M16 together in the bush. And honestly, if you want to keep shotguns relevant on the modern day battlefield, you have to take that approach. You have to carry both. I think about, like a SWAT team, for instance, even the breacher, like that's not his primary weapon. That's an additional tool on him, right? That breaching shotgun, that's not his primary weapon. That's just a tool to breach that door. And I think if you want to keep the viability of shotguns on something like a modern day battlefield, that individual is going to have an additional weapon. Maybe that's a AK-74 SU, or some sort of other 10.5 inch carbine, and XM177, or some Colt Commando or something along those lines, right? And that shotgun is an additional tool. So when you jump in that trench, or when you're trying to breach that door, or when you're trying to make entry into some room, and you want that close quarters capability, you have that shotgun on you. But I don't, the days of seeing a dude and that's his primary weapon only, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon.
No, it's short of an MP. I totally agree with you, Brent.
Other hanging chads?
Well, yeah, sorry to keep dragging this out, but this kind of highlights the difference between military use of the shotgun and the civilian, because in the military, you're going to be part of a team. The team has the ability to have multiple weapon systems. So does the civilian, but the needs are going to be a little different. Like in Brent's scenario, where it's a supplementary weapon, you probably want a short-barreled shotgun. Magazine capacity's not going to be that critical to you. Compactness is kind of like the military going with the M26 Mass, where bolt-action shotgun, 5-round magazines, very, very compact, because it can be stowed when not necessary, yet brought out when you do need it. Whereas civilian, something like the Mass might not be the best thing. Something like an 870, a 590, or a KSG might fit your need a whole lot better, because generally you're not going to be operating in squad and platoon-sized elements as a civilian.
Hey, real quick, guys, Abner just jumped on. He was having some comm issues earlier, so we're going to give him a radio check. And if he's good, I want to get him in here on the shotgun topic before we move on. Abner, how you doing?
Loud and clear. Check.
You are fantastic, Lima Charlie, brother. What are your thoughts? Shotgun, you got the con.
Thoughts on shotgun? Yeah, I think it's I like it. I'm thinking of picking up a semi-auto one because the pump action's great. I like the reliability, but the way things are, a semi-auto I think would really help as a force multiplier. And I was just listening in before you got me on here about how you guys a squad would have a designated guy who's a shotgun guy, breacher. So I think they're just a great all-around utilitarian firearm, and I think it should be in everyone's inventory.
Yeah, I'd agree with that from the civilian perspective. I think everybody should have a shotgun. Every true-blooded American.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we definitely got to admit though, like all around, all purpose, a shotgun is not going to be your go-to, right? So it's like if you're being told you got to go fight in Ukraine tomorrow, regardless of which side it is, the shotgun is not going to be your number one choice, right? Just you don't know what the situation is. You don't know you're going to be fighting in open fields or in a Fallujah type city, right? So it is absolutely a specific niche weapon system. And is it relevant? Does it have its purpose? Yes. But I think we've all can concur that it's not going to be your go-to. It's going to be a special deal. Let's see. We have a super chat. First one of the night. Let's read this. All right. This is BFA Mac. And BFA Mac, you'll be happy to hear that I'm working on that Winter Forge video because you were there. And he actually contributed some of the video for that on me. So I appreciate you, bud. Let's read this. He's like, on this topic, I think for home defense, my wife or 13-year-old son, 9mm pistol caliber carbines is a very approachable. I think pistol caliber carbines is least intimidating, most manageable weapons for small frame individuals. So, yeah, we haven't quite got to the pistol caliber carbines yet. We will get to that. We're going in order from shotguns, submachine guns to pistol caliber carbines. So we will revisit that here in a minute, man. So any save rounds for shotguns before we move on? I think that's like the 5th time I've said that.
Now I'm finally out of rounds.
Why aren't you reloading? All right.
Point.
Okay, so moving on. So submachine guns. Now, a lot of people might say this is a no-brainer, because submachine guns are very popular in World War II, even in Korea. They saw some use in Vietnam. And then, we can't not acknowledge the 1980s and 1990s. I mean, the MP5 was like the counterterrorism weapon of choice for all, your high-speed special operations units. So are they still relevant? And that's a very important question. My 2 cents on this is, it's a pistol caliber, right? So if you are going into a CQB situation, particularly, let's think SWAT teams in America, all right, entering a room, and your law enforcement have a little bit more scrutiny in terms of like who they can put rounds into, and target discrimination and over penetration in walls, like those are all very important things in a law enforcement setting. So I don't know 100%, but I'm not aware of any SWAT teams that still use submachine guns. It used to be freaking all of them. But now all of them, for the most part, carry some sort of 5.56 weapons platform here in the United States. So, I don't know. Let's kick this around. Submachine guns. What else you guys got?
All right. Well, that's my role of taking on things first.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm sick of you always taking the lead on this.
Okay, fine.
I'm joking. You got it. It's back on you.
Okay. I'm going to draw a little distinction here for people. I'll only talk about submachine guns in a military law enforcement role because they're generally unavailable to the civilian public, and that's the role of the PCC. So the submachine gun came about in the First World War as a trench assault weapon for the German stormtroopers. And it really didn't develop that much in the interwar years. A few people dabbled with it. Nobody used it much. Your two big contenders were the German MP-18 and the Thompson gun. Thompson being the most famous by far, although not widely used as everybody thinks it was. Thompson had Colt make an initial batch of them, and it took them nearly 20 years to sell that batch. One, just their cost at the time was incredibly expensive. And two, nobody quite knew what to do with this new weapon. The people who kind of figured it out, unfortunately, were the gangsters during Prohibition. When the Second World War rolled around, the submachine gun, all of a sudden, everybody kind of figured out two important things about it. One, how do you use it? And when everybody's primarily armed with bolt-action rifles, it added a lot of firepower, albeit at close range. The other use that came about, thing that they figured out, was how to make a lot of them quickly. So they went from a lot of machine work and finally made wood and stampings and pressings to crank them out. And the primary example of that in its most purest form is the German MP-40, and in its most crudest form is the British Sten. Two very different guns, work on the exact same principle, do the exact same thing. One was very expensive to produce. The other was produced for literally just a few dollars. And on the British Sten gun, one of the maintenance procedures, if it you couldn't get it to work, you threw it away. And through the Second World War, that's kind of the role it filled. Like, key personnel would carry it as a means of close-up firepower to supplement the rifle squad, or it was a supplementary weapon for armored vehicle crewmen. As history went on, as you start moving into the 1960s Cold War era, the invention of the assault rifle, everybody declared the submachine gun to be dead. And it then kind of became the purview of law enforcement. And then the limitations of the open bolt submachine gun really came to light, because open bolt submachine guns, by having the big mass of the bolt move back and forth, are horrible to accuracy. So that leads pretty much to the direct invention of the MP5, which became the gold standard in submachine guns. What began to bring the downfall of the submachine gun is armor penetration. I think of two distinct examples. One, in Grenada, I talked to an Army Ranger who assaulted the airfield. He was equipped with an MP5, and he talks about being pinned down by some Cubans with AK-47s and arcing the fire on his MP5 to try to get suppressive fire on them. And then there was another incident where the Austrian police force was armed with Uzis, and they went up against a bunch of bank robbers who barricaded themselves in the bank and turned over some big, heavy marble table in the bank, and were impervious to the submachine guns that the Austrian police have. So I think what's kind of led to the decline of the submachine gun is caliber, really. Not the gun itself, just the caliber. And now the fact that just about anything in 5.56 is made in a compact form that's roughly about the same size as a submachine gun, and with modern technology, probably lighter. Now, if you're armed with some type of pistol caliber submachine gun in the modern military, what role does it play? I think it becomes a personal defense weapon. So your truck drivers, your artillery crews, your tank crewmen, those kind of guys can have submachine guns, because really by the time they get into the fight, the submachine gun does one thing. It allows them to run away gallantly, so they can get away from the guys carrying assault rifles. And that, I think, is its modern day role on the battlefield. And for law enforcement, due to the more proliferation of armor and the fact that it's likely the bad guys will have it, I think just 5.56 has supplemented it just strictly due to caliber.
Yeah, when Bruce and I were doing the Mac v SOG videos, it was interesting to see like the amount of submachine guns those guys used, at least in the early years. But as the XM177s became more available, it seemed like, those guys were just pushed all the subguns aside and like, hey, no, this has all the benefits of the compactness of those submachine guns, and we still have those rifle caliber. So that was kind of the downfall of it there, at least based on what we saw. But then again, you have that interesting time period, 80s and 90s, where it seemed like all the elite units, to include civilian law enforcement, were just completely outfitted with MP5s. So
I think part of that is mystique too, because what's one big thing that happened in the 1980s with the MP5? That's when the SAS stormed the Iranian embassy in London, and it was on the nightly news. And here come these black CAD troopers with this very cool looking subgun, and they did an incredibly effective job of clearing out that embassy with it. It worked extremely well in that role. And as terrorism began to blossom, because this is when counterterrorism forces start to become in vogue in all the nations, everybody went with what worked. And at that time, H&K was quite happy to make all the MP5s people wanted.
Yeah, honestly, I think body armor, kind of what you were talking about earlier, body armor absolutely was probably the downfall to the proliferation of submachine guns in these specialized units. Because now it's like even terrorists. I mean, you can't watch conflicts around the world going on without seeing, body armor on individuals.
Yeah, that's true. And I think we can go back to Vietnam when we look at a real shift. As Les said, in World War II, the Germans loved their submachine guns and the Russians loved theirs as well. And it was very common to see Russian units outfitted with submachine guns, PPSH 41s and PPS 43s. And they were used effectively and enjoyed over something like a bolt action rifle, which the Russians already had. But here was the big difference at that time. A submachine gun in World War II was relatively compact. Whether we look at a Sten, which had a removable stock, or we had an MP40 that had an underfolder stock, we had a PPS 43, which had an overfolder stock. They all were very compact and could be carried inside of armored vehicles as support in trucks, airborne units, anywhere that you needed something compact. Now let's fast forward to Vietnam. The U.S. had the M3 grease gun. That was the standard issue submachine gun for U.S. forces. It was 45 ACP, high capacity magazine, was relatively heavy, but it was cheap to produce. It had basically replaced our Thompson, which was none of those things. So Colt comes along and Colt goes, we want that market. If we just chop down this big M16, can we rebrand this as a submachine gun and steal the market? And that's exactly what they did. They marketed the XM177E1 and the variants before that as a submachine gun. Now, today we wouldn't call it a submachine gun because it fires to 5.56. That doesn't matter for someone trying to sell something to the military. If they can get the military to accept this is a submachine gun because it's got full auto capability, it's compact and lightweight, every bit as much so as the grease gun that we were running at the time, but it fixes the logistical problem because now we only have to supply those guys with 5.56 ammunition. And secondly, it uses a lot of same parts that the regular rifle already does. And I can't think of a downside. The only downside that I can think of would be in suppression, but that wasn't really a big thing during Vietnam, running a lot of suppressors. Those were fairly niche and regulated to only very specific units like snipers and MAC-V-SOG. So suppressors weren't a big deal. That gun did everything that the submachine guns before them did and did it probably better. Fast forward to today. That's especially true in the U.S. civilian world, right? You can go out and you can get a 7.5-inch barreled AR or a 10.5-inch barreled AR as an SBR. You can even have a folding stock on that thing. And UT-74 is one of the guys to look at that demonstrates some of these things because he owns all of these. And I can't wait to hear his input on these because he shoots both. And I know he loves both. I know he's got a lot going on in his head there that he's going to share with us. But that was the beginning of the end. And I don't disagree that body armor had a lot to do with that. And I think body armor had more to do with it when it came to law enforcement use of 9mm and all of a sudden law enforcement goes, man, we need something that can get through this car glass better, through these car doors better, through this guy that's now wearing a surplus PASGT vest or whatever the case may be. We need something with a little more penetration. And the 5.56 brought that. But anyway, that's my spiel on it. I think that Vietnam was where you really see the turning point for militaries going from submachine guns, i.e. being pistol caliber machine guns, to intermediate caliber machine guns. And Russia did the exact same thing. They came out with the Krinkov, right? They did this. They did exactly what we did. They took full-size AK, and I think they went to Tula, and they said, Tula, guess what? You're going to start making these now. And all of a sudden, they started making their version of the Car 15, which is the Krinkov.
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with a lot of research back in the 90s of getting away from them. You know, they were looking at, like you said, Bruce, deflection off of windshields and glass and door panels. It just wasn't, it was penetrating, but it would deflect as it penetrated, and it just wasn't as effective in those kind of situations. Now, CQB, vehicle CQB, it's good, but when you're shooting at a suspect that's in a vehicle, it's just not as effective as a regular rifle round.
UT74, I know you're about to take over, but I want to let you make a point that I was going to make. Bring suppressors into this, because I think that's a strong point for the pistol card or submachine gun.
Yeah, as you guys know, in the past 3 or 5 years, PCCs have just like exploded, and that's because of not the ammo situation, right? The cost of ammo, 223, 5.56 cost so much, so everyone started going to the pistol calibers to shoot because they're more affordable, even though the prices went up. And then the advent of suppressors dropping down in price as well. So it was the perfect mix for PCCs to make a big comeback. And then like you guys were mentioning about in Vietnam, what was the science behind the 9mm back then? It was just a full metal jacket, 115 grain. Now with modern technology, we have better ballistics out of the 9mm, right? So all the hollow points, or remember the Hydra Shock when it came out, the little rod inside, and everyone's all like, oh wow, But as technology went on, 9mm became much better, almost as good as 40 caliber. So and you guys know the story about 40 caliber and 9mm with the felt recoil and the FBI going back to the 9mm. But with the suppressors, with a PCC and a suppressor, it's a great mix, because with the 5.56, you're never gonna fully suppress 5.56. You'll get suppression at the shooter's ear, right? And I was just watching more suppressor tests last night. It's now 6 inches. They measure from 6 inches to the right of the shooter's ear, and then a meter to the left of the barrel now. And when they were testing the meter to the left, 1 meter to the left of the barrel, you're getting 130 decibels, which is still hearing safe, right? And then over on the right side of the ear, it's 140 plus. So it's still with that 5.56 cartridge, you're still getting that pop. Now you bring a 9mm and then subsonics, which I reload subsonics, and everyone who's next to me is like, I just hear the bullet whizzing down range, Ab. Soup, 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 soup. That's it. And of course you'll get that primer pop because my platform, I'm using the KP9, so it's not a sealed system. So there's that. You get a firecracker, but it's nothing like the rapport if there was no suppressor on it. So I think with the 9mm, the subgun with a suppressor, it really, really does make a nice package for the personal defense. Again, versus someone who's armored or behind hardcover, yeah, it's not going to work. Okay, you'll probably scare him, but if he's got an AK or an AR or whatever, he's not, he'll be concerned, but he's going to know I got more firepower. So I think that's why for the civilian market, the PCC or the SBR pistol caliber firearm with a suppressor, really, it just shines, right? And of course, you get cool points for social media.
Well, I mean, and on top of that, like who's throwing on ear pro, when they hear a bump in the middle of the night? I'm not. I mean, I'm not saying there ain't somebody out there that's, tells themselves that they are going to, but when push comes to shove, like you're running to your freaking safe or wherever you're keeping your firearm and you're grabbing your firearm and going, right? You're not sitting there like, oh, I need to put on my electronic ear pro and push that button to turn it on. And there's no time for that shit. You're grabbing your weapon, you're going. And so, yeah, that pistol caliber carbine with a suppressor, it does sound like a viable option. Plus, who's breaking in your house wearing freaking body armor? Unless you got a freaking.
Well, Antifa likes to use body armor now, we're finding out down there with the recent events there in Atlanta. So that's actually kind of relevant.
Right. But when you're doing like a threat analysis on your home,
body armor is low threat or low
Right.
target you'll have to deal with for sure.
The dude that's kicking in your back door because he thinks you're not home probably doesn't have his fucking interceptor vest on. Now, Antifa at a riot, yeah, they're probably outfitted head to toe. So your pistol caliber carbine probably isn't what you're going to be grabbing if you got a bunch of rioters outside your home with Molotov cocktails. So,
I also wanted to state that, let's say you have a PCC that's an 8-inch barrel or possibly a 7 or a 5. And you guys know this, but maybe some of the audience doesn't know. Adding to the suppressor will add some velocity to the bullet too. So there's a little gain in that. I know the video games say it reduces the bullet's velocity. Actually, no, it actually increases it by 50, maybe 75 feet per second. In some cases, maybe even 100. So that helps in that sense too.
Well, as Paul Harrell would say, that's enough of a difference to make a difference.
I gotta say, I own a couple of pistol caliber carbines. Now, in full disclosure, they are not my go-tos. Like I've already specified. Like I have my go-to for bumping a night. I have an AR and I have a 12 gauge shotgun, and then I have a bunch of other shit for XYZ reasons. Reasons, but those are not, pistol caliber carbine is not my go-to. However, I have had some buddies of mine that have them, the Palmetto State Armory 9mm AK variant and another one of those new MP5 clones. And I've shot those, and goddamn, guys, they are sweet shooters. They are accurate. Hell, Primary Arms has a prism for them with BDC in it. So I could, if I had one of those, if I had that Palmetto State Armory AK pistol and 9mm, it may be a contender for some of the reasons I was mentioning earlier with the shotgun, right? The over penetration in the house and stuff like that. If I had one of those and I can mount a light on it and stuff like that, which I know they can, that might be a viable option for bump in the night type stuff. So
yeah, I'm just thinking about this, Brent. I've got a lot of friends that have pistol caliber carbines as well. And one friend that's just recently purchased an MP5 semi-auto, which is in 9mm. And yeah, you can trick those out. You can make them reliable. You can suppress them and make them super quiet. And there's something to be said for that. There's no doubt. I don't think anyone would argue. They're a lot of fun. If you want to take something out, shoot, have a good time with, play with your reloads, put together some subsonic rounds. You want to talk about stupid quiet? See how stupid quiet you could create one. That's fantastic. But of all the friends I've got, I can't think of any that the pistol caliber carbine is necessarily their go-to. It's not necessarily their first choice. They still want the more guarantee, if you will, or the surety that they're going to be able to, when they start firing at a threat, that threat's going to start taking tremendous damage instantly, body armor or no body armor. One thing, since we're sort of started to blur from submachine guns to PCCs, and I think that's absolutely relevant because not many of us are going to have registered submachine guns that we have access to, but a PCC is, let's face it, for most intents and purposes, the same thing, just in semi only. I wanted to talk about something that a lot of people in chat were talking about in the beginning. There's a lot of people in chat that have said, oh, I bought one for my wife, I bought one for my daughter, whatever. I bought, an AR and 9mm, whatever, because it's a smaller bullet, therefore it's more friendly for them to shoot. Well, I did the same thing years ago. I built a 9mm AR that had about an 8-9 inch barrel. It had Colt magazines. And here's what I found when I actually started shooting that thing. It's got just as much recoil as my 5.56 guns. So I don't know what you guys are doing, and I'm not saying, but I was floored. I was shocked. I'll be the first one to admit I was wrong. Here I was. I spent about $1,200 on this thing and was getting ready to give it to my wife, and I'm like, this has kicks as much as a 5.56 gun. So I gave that. My brother's got that now. It's a fun toy for the kids to go and shoot, and we have a little primary arms. BDC optic on it also, and we used to go out to the pond and shoot turtles with it. It's fun for that, but no one's grabbing it for personal defense. What do we do for personal defense? Well, she's got a 16-inch barrel lightweight AR build, and that's her, and it looks just like ones that I've got and ones that you guys have. It's just that 5.56 round, and I'm sorry guys, I hate to go crazy, but that 5.56 round has done so much. Because it's low recoil, but it's got a high impact, a devastating wounds, and you can fit it into so many different packages. That's the reason that 5.56 is my go-to, and anything else is either a collectible firearm or very niche type weapon. But most everything I've got that you will ever see me train with is going to be in 5.56. Just go back and look at any of the videos I've ever been in. I'm always carrying 5.56. Let me look at this super chat real quick. BFA Mac, $5. All right. Opinion, home defense is less about ballistics, nerd statistics, and more about how family can defend themselves. Yeah, guys, this kind of goes back to what I said before, which is stuff can look real cool. And there's nothing wrong with having toys that look real cool. But when your life is on the line, or maybe more importantly, a family member's life is on the line, you don't care what that tool looks like. You want that tool to be effective and to stop a threat.
I'm also going to address another super chat we had earlier where a person was asking about the 5.7 round. I'm a fan of that round. I have a PS90 and an FN 5.7 pistol. And those are my truck guns because I look at traveling in my vehicle the same way as traveling in a tank or an APC. If I need to use that weapon, I need it so I can run away gallantly. And that it'll do great for that. I can reach out to 200 meters easily with it. It shoots flat like a laser beam, so I'm not worried about BDC. It's very controllable. I have 50 rounds on tap, plus I have a little magazine carrier. So I have 200 rounds to solve my problem or run away from it. In that specific niche role, I think it works outstanding.
Speaking of truck guns, this just came to mind, and I don't mean to hit the rewind button here, but have you guys messed with the 12 gauge shockwaves? They got the gooseneck handles. Dude, Les, have you ever shot one?
Yeah, that's why, I like my wrists.
Dude, if you guys ever want the feeling that you want to throw on a ski mask and go knock over a 7-Eleven, go get you a 12 gauge shockwave. I tell you, that is one gun I bought just for cool factor. It is a legal short barreled shotgun. It just because of the pistol, or the grip on it is shaped like a gooseneck. It's not considered a shotgun; it's considered a firearm. So it's
well,
just
that would be relevant for being in a spider hole when you're being assaulted by Chi-Com paratroopers. So you got me on that one, Brent.
If you want to talk about truck gun, oh my God, if there's one gun that I would just love to, drive down the street because there's goddamn infected zombies everywhere and just shooting over one arm while driving the truck in the other. That's it, man. That's a lot of fun. But yeah, they jack your wrist up, boy. So.
Is the Shockwave the 870? You guys, do you know? Is that the 870 or is that the Mossberg?
There's two.
They have the 870 and they also have the Mossberg.
Yeah, so my brother's got an 870, I believe, in 20 gauge. Now, how nice is that?
That'd probably be a very nice breech gun.
Yeah. So anyways, I digress. I just I wanted to throw that out there since you said the word truck gun, and it didn't come up during the shotgun brief. So
another use for PCC we've kind of touched on is training. I do have an AR PCC in 9mm using Colt mags, just like Bruce, and I've got it tricked out like my mainline AR. And the main reason is that's a lot more pleasant to shoot at an indoor range. I can still do all the training and same things with it, but it's just more pleasant to shoot indoors. And the PCC craze started, if you think about it, we had that time right about 2016 to 2018 where 9mm was dirt freaking cheap. So you could blast out a lot of rounds for a fraction of the price of 5.56. So it made sense to have a 9mm carbine looking exactly like your 5.56 carbine.
And by the
That's
way,
how I have my PCC set up. It's just like my regular AR. The only difference is I have a green laser on my PCC.
Jared, is part of the reason you did that cost?
What's that?
Is part of the reason you built the PCC cost of ammunition?
Not really, because when I got it, well, yeah, it was. Because when I got it, 9mm was pretty cheap. Soon as I got it, it skyrocketed. So it was kind of a moot point at that point. But it is a fun little gun to go out and shoot with, and I do a lot of training with it.
Yeah, they're great. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to piggyback off what Bruce was saying about the recoil impulse, and he's right, especially with the AR 9mm. I have one as well in SBR format, and I forget about how much mass is slamming into my shoulder. And if I recall, I remember sometimes getting home and I'm like, man, my shoulder's a little tender from that little rifle. And I think that's where, blowback versus delayed roller, that I'm telling, man, I tell people, a lot of people to ask me like, hey, I'm looking at this 9mm, right? And they're like, should I get an AR? Should I get the KP9, or should I get the AKB, or should I get the MP5 clone? And I said, well, what do you plan to do with it? Like, are you going to suppress it? And they're like, yeah, I'm going to suppress it. I said, just spend the money and go get that MP5 clone. I tell people, it's just like, I'm going to tell you, right, I've shot an MP5 a full auto, and that gun does not move whatsoever. It is like a laser beam. And when you suppress it with the delayed roller system, it's just quiet. And I just tell people, just spend the money. If this is going to be your first one and you have money to burn, spend the $2,000 and get that MP5 with a delayed roller. And if you have a suppressor, man, have fun with it. So I tell people, if it's your first one, go get the MP5 clone.
I've shot an MP5 on full auto when I went to the Marine Corps Foreign Weapons Instructor course, and oh my God, talk about like controllability, on full auto. I mean, it's a sweet system. But I do want to go back to the original question. So like viability and like relevancy, right? For military and civilian use. For military, the only relevant application I can see for military purposes for a submachine gun or pistol caliber carbine is just simply silence, right? Maybe sentry takedown, something along those lines. But outside that, I just can't see a role that weapon system could fill that couldn't be filled already by a carbine AR platform or similar type weapon. For civilian use, having shot pistol caliber carbines of my buddies that are like modern ones with Picatinny rails and can mount flashlights and optics and all other shit, I absolutely think that somebody could do a threat analysis of their own situation, right, at their house. What am I most likely going to encounter? Well, the most likely scenario I'm going to encounter is some douchebag kicking in my back door because he thinks I'm not home. Absolutely, I think a pistol caliber carbine is a viable option for the same reason somebody would think that a regular pistol is a viable option, right? Well, what's going to be more effective? A pistol caliber carbine with a 30-round magazine. Well, some of them have more than that, right? Or a pistol with, that you're shooting with two hands as opposed to having, two hands and a stock, right? Your pistol caliber carbine is going to be more controllable, more accurate, and in my opinion, would be a better option if, let's say, you're living in an apartment and you're concerned about over-penetration or something along those lines, right? Pistol caliber carbine, in my opinion, after doing a threat analysis where your most likely threat is going to be some, crook trying to break in your house to steal something, that's absolutely a viable option. So, but if you're more concerned after your own personal threat analysis of, let's say I live on the southern border, right? And we got drug cartels moving in squad size formation, hauling in dope, and they need a place to crash for the night. And they see your little ranch house out there in the freaking desert, and there's nobody for miles. Well, guess what, man? I don't think a pistol caliber carbine's for you. I think you need to be rocking a freaking AR with goddamn 30-round magazine and multiple magazines ready to rock and roll as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Because that's what they're bringing to the fight.
Right.
Well
And
said,
if that's what they got, then if you're on the receiving end of that, you're going to wish that that's what you had, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing I want to say, because there's a lot of talk about caliber and wall penetration. I think that there's some misconceptions out there on wall penetration and different calibers and different ammunition that's available. So I think it was BFA Mac, and I know Brent, you'll pull up the super chat where he was asking about small stature person like a wife or a child or something. And guys, I don't want this. I don't want Paul Harrell to tell me to stop stalking him, but go check out his videos. He built a house with spec 2x4s, studs, and sheetrock and all this stuff. And he actually started firing different calibers. He did 12 gauge, 9mm, maybe a few other pistol calibers, and 5.56. You're going to be really surprised by the results of how far those actually penetrated and how far they didn't. The 5.56 had a tendency to break up fairly quickly because it's moving so fast. So it's not like a lawn dart shooting through wall after wall after wall. And in some cases, those pistol calibers that didn't break up went farther or as far as the 5.56 did. And that's crazy. Who would think that, right? Like that doesn't make sense. But the way he explains it, it starts to. So before you decide on a complete platform based on that, based on, your neighborhood or your house needs, look at that real data, that real information that he's got, and then make an informed decision on your own. I'm going to go ahead and read BFA Max super chat here because he wasn't asking about caliber. Let's see. What's the least intimidating, most minimal weapon for a small framed individual, woman, child? Okay. In an urban environment with neighbors in a brick home within 80 feet. Well, that's, you're kind of talking about my wife there. Okay. And my wife's she's got three go-tos. All right. She's Mexican. We're going to leave the knife out of it. All right. We'll leave the knife out of it, but she's got her 9mm handgun with a weapon light and night sights. Okay. That she's very familiar with. It's right on the bedside. It's ready to go. She can pick that up, lights on, so she can identify the target, and she can run that weapon just fine. And she has that because it's something she's familiar with. She carries it every day, so she's familiar with that handgun. Okay,
hey, Bruce, real quick, I have to interject because at this very moment we have 223 viewers.
Oh, 223. Hey, let me know when we've got 5.56. That's what I'm talking about. All right, good job, guys. You guys are you're getting informed out there. But her go-to rifle, she's got just a regular 5.56 AR. There's nothing special about it, guys. Think Colt M4 with a weapon light and with a low light optic, but same thing, weapon light. And thirdly, what's beside my bed? Scattergun, weapon light, low light optic. She's fired it. She knows what that 12 gauge pump, will do to her small frame, but she can handle it. And I can tell you, if someone's threatening us directly, she's not going to be worried about the recoil of that weapon. And if you get that first shot on target, you're going to have an impact on that bad guy's attitude. And I'll let you guys, I'm sure he didn't want to hear me talk. So you guys, you put your input in there on what you think on small frame weapons for a female or small statured person. I don't think any of those she has are not intimidating. Mac, I'll just say this. I wouldn't care what's intimidating or not. If some bad guy's breaking in my house and he's going to mess with my wife, I want her to look intimidating, because maybe he'll turn around and go the other way before we've got to clean up the floors. So I think I don't have a problem with intimidating. I want effective. I don't care what it looks like.
I think he might have meant intimidating to the user, not necessarily to the end.
Fair enough, Jared.
I believe that's what he meant. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Mac, I'll just say, go out and train with her. A loved one teaching her how to do it and do it properly is going to be less intimidating. If she's never fired a firearm before, fine. Start off with 22 and work her way up. But I've said this before. I hate to say it. I'll say it again, but I'm in so many training classes where you see a female show up and you can tell she's lost. She's not one of the guys that's at this training class. She's not a frequent flyer of training classes. Almost every instance she's there because she's a victim, and she's decided she's not going to be a victim again. And rather than being proactive, she's being reactive. And now she's interjecting herself into a world she doesn't know anything about, but she's damn certain she's not going to be a victim again. And she's going to learn to protect herself. If that should be the mentality of this person in your life, and if it is, they'll get over the recoil. I mean, I wouldn't take a small frame person out, put them on 12 gauge, 3-inch Magnum first thing. That's just going to turn them off. But maybe start off a 22, go to a 9mm really quickly. Most women, I would just start out on a 9mm handgun. Good form, proper stance, and all that stuff. Recoil management's going to be fine. And an AR also. What did we just spend 30 minutes talking about? AR has taken over PCCs and submachine guns because it's low recoil. There you go, right there, brother.
Yeah, I would add to that too. Don't worry about caliber if you stay in the 9mm realm. I go over to Finland. I shoot in competitions over there. The top female shooter I've shot in the same squad with her. She can run a Glock 9mm and run circles over everybody, and she's probably 100 pounds soaking wet with all her gear on. And recoil does not affect anything she does. So, once they get used to the loud noise, any 9mm or below, she'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think to answer that gentleman's question, like something that's not intimidating, I guess, like Jared said about operating. A coworker of mine, older guy, 62 years old, he's fallen apart from weightlifting all his life. And I told him he was looking at the Ruger PCC, and I strongly suggest, for that person, if for his wife, get a Ruger PCC, because it's very simple, very basic. There's not a lot of moving parts. The safety's all there. It doesn't look like some space gun, right? It's just a charging handle on the right-hand side, a magazine well that you shove a magazine in and point and shoot. So that's my recommendation for that person. Ruger PCC.
That is hard to argue with UT-74.
What are your guys' thoughts on the whole, relevancy for military law enforcement, civilian, and stuff like that?
It's an interesting question because the PCC and SMG blend so well. I will say I noticed on my trips over to Europe that whereas where an American law enforcement officer would most likely be armed with a shotgun or some type of AR, his European counterpart probably almost guaranteed to have a submachine gun or PCC of some type. And I think the advantage that gives them is he can take a better well-aimed shot than he could with his pistol. And he gets range. I think with any submachine gun, PCC, you can go to 100 yards as a given. And if you've got some skill, you can probably make it out to 2. So that's kind of the relevance of it right there. And to address an earlier super chat, somebody asked about the Chris Vector. I have been lucky enough to fire that both in the full auto mode and as the civilian semi-auto only. In full auto, there's a there. That recoil control system, it works. It tends to work with the higher calibers like 10 millimeter and 45 ACP versus 9 millimeter because I don't think that round has much recoil to start with. So there's a there. I haven't worked with it so much that I can say definitively, but just a few magazines through it, I thought, yeah, something going on here. It was very easy to control. All those advantages are absolutely meaningless if you're limited to semi-auto. Your finger cannot actuate that trigger fast enough to mimic full auto fire. So whatever advantage of recoil reduction you get out of that system the Chris Vector uses, you're not going to get on the semi-automatic side. However, it's probably one of the freaking coolest looking guns out there, which is relevant enough to buy it if you want it.
I can vouch for that. I got a good friend of mine that has one, and it's SBR and everything else. It's cool. It's really cool to mess with and shoot. But yeah, I mean, it's not full auto.
To try and focus on your question, Brent, for the application of 9mm in the military and law enforcement role. You guys know that the Army got a B&T contract for like a few thousand of those with suppressors. So that kind of tells you what they're planning to use that for. And then for law enforcement, I think that would be used more where, when there's more the public's more around. Like if you're patrolling right on foot, like a foot patrol, a 9mm, sub gun would work, right? You're working the beat, you're walking the beat, like they do in New York, right? That kind of implementation where you got to be, you can't over penetrate because there could be civilians hiding behind something, right? And again, the 9mm, it's very accurate, right? Well into 50 yards, even 75 yards, as long as you do your work, right? So I think that's where I think the 9mm platform would work, right, in the law enforcement, where you got a lot of civilians around. You can't over penetrate. You're not trying to shoot through hard cover or anything like that. And again, like you mentioned earlier, threat assessment, like is who's going to walk around with an interceptor vest, right, in big crowds, right? And of course, we all know that police, they have their carbines in their car, so they can always go back to the vehicle to pick up their 5.56 if they end up meeting a hard target. So
yeah, funny story about police and submachine guns. So I'm in high school, and my friend's dad has a pretty high up position in the Army. He goes to a conference at NATO headquarters in Belgium, and they made a family trip out of it, and I got to tag along. So while he's out doing his Army conference stuff and stuff, me and my friend, we go hitting all the surplus shops we can find in Brussels. We got a big bag of stuff with us, and we're walking back towards the hotel, and we're going right by NATO headquarters as we do it. My friend turns to me and goes, it's a good thing these aren't satchel charges, man. We could throw these right over the fence, and man, that cause all kinds of hate and discontent. And apparently the guards thought the exact same thing, because seconds later we found ourselves face down on the pavement. All right, it was more funny after the fact, apparently.
All right, any final thoughts on this topic? I think we've expended all rounds here.
I got one thing that kept kind of coming up in chat, and rightfully so. A lot of guys are talking about 300 Blackout. Now we're talking about a caliber here, not necessarily, but I think it's relevant in because 300 Blackout kind of came about because it's in some ways it blurs the lines between a pistol caliber carbine and a full size rifle, because you can cater that ammunition. You can. And I have a couple, and we use one for hunting hogs. So I've seen firsthand what it can do, and I really like it. I built it for that purpose. I went out hunting hogs with a 5.56 suppressed rifle, and after that first hog hunt, I came right back, threw a bunch of money, and built a short-barreled rifle, 300 Blackout suppressed, because I wanted to build one, a lighter rifle, but secondly, I liked having you can get 300 Blackout in subsonic. Now, this is important. If those of you guys that are worried about your noise discipline, you get 300 Blackout in subsonic. UT-74 was talking about getting that crack from his blowback 9mm. Well, on an AR, that chamber is locked, and so you don't get that crack. So you're not getting a crack from the chamber opening, but you're also not getting a crack from the bullet going downrange because it's subsonic. It's not going supersonic. And I'm able to take that thing and I'm able to shoot a hog, and it'll fall down on its side squealing. And 3 other hogs around it are looking at it like, what's your problem? And I get a second shot, and I might get a third shot. Now, how could we use that at home? Well, at home, if you wanted to run subsonic because you're worried about, for whatever, some type of noise discipline for whatever reason, someone breaks into your house and you've got a 300 Blackout subsonic suppressed, you're probably going to have to call the cops because your neighbors aren't going to know anything's going on at your house. It's really that quiet. It's scary quiet. But at the same time, you can run supersonic, and they make some amazing defensive rounds for 300 Blackout and supersonic that will do tremendous tissue damage to somebody if you don't want to run it suppressed, or if you want to run it suppressed and run it a little bit louder. But you still have so you're getting the shorter range, lower velocity round in subsonic that you would get from, say, a handgun, or you can go supersonic if you need to get a little more distance and a little more flat trajectory. Now, you're not going to reach the levels of 5.56, okay? If you start shooting that thing at 600 yards, it's a freaking mortar. But at reasonable ranges, 250 yards and in, if you're one of those in chat going, I've got a 300 Blackout and I'm trying to justify it, okay, you can justify it to me. You can make that work, and it's a supportive enough round. Yes, it's relatively expensive to buy, but it's out there. You can get it, and most of the parts are the same as an AR-15, which are readily available anywhere you want.
Solid
And
points,
just-
Bruce.
And just to piggyback off of Bruce, I fired 300 Blackout out of a bolt action suppressed, and it is dead quiet. It's scary quiet. So, just to add to Bruce, that bullet really is nice suppressed. It is like, if someone said, I don't want to use 9mm, I want something bigger or stronger or better than 9mm, I would say then do 300 Blackout suppressed. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just FYI though, level 3A body armor stopped it. At least when I shot it.
Aim for something fleshy.
Hey, Brent, I've got something special. I've got some black tip AP Ox 6 loaded into a 300 Blackout cartridge, and I have no idea what it'll do, but there may be a solution for body armor for 300 Blackout. I don't know. We haven't tested it yet, but when you want to do the test, we'll do it and we'll put it up on your video or up on your channel.
Why don't you put it on your channel?
I have some old Kevlar, actually, from a whole bunch of old Kevlar from the 90s that are like, some of them have water stains and all that, but I have a lot, so I can donate those.
Yeah, I've got some 3A too, and 3A is not military grade body armor, but it's what I think a lot of law enforcement, security, and private people wear too. So it would still be, if that's a concern for you guys, that there may be a solution, because when it comes to 300 Blackout, everybody and their brother reloads that stuff, and there's all kind of custom loads for it, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But my brother and I have a friend. He has a friend that loves to reload, and he's put some wacky stuff together for us over the years.
Yeah, on that note, one of the other advantages of 300 Blackout, even if you shoot subsonic 300 Blackout unsuppressed, it is noticeably quieter, which will be more ear friendly for you, especially in a home defense situation. It's scary how much quieter it is. If you're used to 5.56, you'll actually think you have a squib load.
Yeah, I just want to point out there was a super chat that was done earlier, and the topic was not related to what we're covering. So it's like I really love and appreciate you guys that are doing the super chats, but if you're posting something that's completely off topic, we're not gonna stop everybody's conversation over the topic at hand to address that. So, all right,
Now I'm curious. I'm curious what the person asked.
Are you bi-curious?
You're wrong for that, bro.
You can't ask that question anymore.
All right, guys. Are we ready for around the horn closing thoughts, or do we have something else?
Well, I'll add one other thing that goes to both the submachine gun and the shotgun, and that's logistics. If you're trying to think about what shotgun to get, and it's not a primary weapon system for you, so you don't want to invest tons of money, go to your local consignment rack at your gun shop or pawn shop, pick out the 870 or Mossberg 500 that makes your heart go pitter-patter, and go ahead and buy it. There's effectively no difference between the two guns. They're ridiculously reliable. There's zillions upon zillions of accessories for them, so if you find something with it you don't like, you can change it. Extra barrels for them are very reasonable. So if you buy the 870 that has the 28-inch hunting barrel, getting an 18-inch home defense riot gun barrel, super easy, very inexpensive to do. One gun can do two jobs. That police turning gun that was left in the clamp of the cruiser too long and it's marred up the receiver, get a gun skin if it bothers you, or rattle can it. If you don't like the water stained wood stock that's dry rotted, go get something from Magpul. It's the Legos of shotguns, and that works for an 870 or a 500. Nice, low cost, less than $500. You can get a great, reliable shotgun, put all kinds of upgrades on it, and still have some money left over for ammo. For the PCC submachine gun, more PCC. We talked about it earlier, but there is a logistical advantage for setting your PCC up to be just like your 5.56 rifle. 9mm is cheaper than 5.56. Right now, it's also a little more plentiful and easier to get, much more pleasant to shoot indoors. And the new standard in PCCs is your 9mm AR that will run off Glock mags. So if you run a Glock pistol, you even get some compatibility there. So logistically, that's what you should be looking for, those two weapon systems, in my opinion.
All right, guys, I'm gonna start round robin here, going around the horn. So obviously, anything that's applicable to the topics we've covered tonight. Also, I'd like you guys, everybody on here tonight has their own respective YouTube channel. So give your channel update, please, and then we'll close it out for the night. So kicking it over to the good Bruce at Camp Armament. You got the con, brother.
Well, thanks. First of all, Brent just said it. Bruce at Camp Armament. That's my YouTube channel. I do have some things coming down the pike. I've got a new camera, and I'm going to be doing some sort of gunsmith bench videos that I'm working on. Got quite a few things in my head that those are going to start rolling out pretty soon, because I've got a job that I've got to do where I'm refinishing some AK furniture, and I'm going to do some videos on it. I got on YouTube, like you guys do a lot of times, to look and research how other people are doing it. And I decided, well, I can share my experience also. I think I can contribute something back there. In terms of shotguns, submachine guns, PCCs, still relevant? Relevant, yes. But I think we've pretty much all covered that they're niche. And so for 95% of you guys out there, a 5.56 rifle is going to be your go-to, or something to that effect. It's going to be your go-to. It's going to be, if you only had to have one, and I get asked this all the time, if you can only have one, what are you going to have? Well, it's got to be my 5.56 rifle. And you guys may say, well, it's my 7.62 by 39 rifle, or it's my 300 Blackout rifle, or it's my 7.62 NATO rifle. That's fine. I'm not arguing caliber, but I'm just saying a rifle capable of 0 to 600, 700 meters. You've covered all the bases there. You might not have done them all great, but you've got them all covered. But if you're in a situation where you're not going to need range, and maybe you're not going to need penetration, okay, well then shotguns or PCC. PCCs are great for concealment if you want something, a really small package, or maybe something that breaks down, or barrels are removed. There's a lot of really neat stuff that's out there that we didn't really get into. It would probably fit that role. I mean, like an MP5K. I mean, that's not a whole lot bigger than a large handgun, and you get more capability there. So just think about what you really need. And if you've got a safe full of guns already, well, then the answer is yes. You should have all three. You should have your shotguns and your PCCs and be saving up for that submachine gun, your first submachine gun. But if you don't, and you've only got one or two, or you're thinking about suggesting something for somebody else, really think about what you're going to be using that for, and make sure that any threat that you envision yourself running into, you're going to be able to deal with that threat using that platform.
All right. Well, coming up on my channel, Pegasus Tests, I've just posted a video on dyeing some Czech desert pattern field gear to see if you can make it compatible to a woodland environment. Check that out, please. Next week, I'll be doing a review on the gear of itself, what it does and what the utility is, because there's a lot of it out there right now, and it's available at a really reasonable price. This has been a great and interesting topic. I'm looking forward to doing more on this, and I hope to see you all next week.
All right. My YouTube channel is 2 Alpha Solutions. I think I just hit 100 subscribers just a little bit ago. So I just got a computer last week that's capable of doing video and stuff. So I'm hoping to get some videos out there here in the near future. Not sure exactly when that's going to happen yet. I have some video editing software that I looked at, and I bought it already and opened it up, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? So Brent, I will be probably hitting you up here pretty soon to help me out with that. But I'm going to do some everyday preparedness type videos. Yoda, my shepherd, is going to be in quite a few of them here in the beginning. Just things specific to my everyday life and being out in the world and trying to get home safely. As far as the 3 topics we talked about, I think they are very niche. I think they have their relevance in the world. But I'm a very basic person. I like to keep things very basic because there's so many millions and millions of options out there for everything. And you can overthink this in a split second of what is out there and what you want to do. But whatever you get, my main thing is train with it and be proficient in whatever you get out there.
Okay, my channel here on YouTube is Uniform Tango 74, and on my channel, guys, I have mostly just information stuff and things that I upgrade on my firearms that people may be interested in. I also have an Instagram account. My Instagram account basically focuses more on my art. It's pencil_tiger at Instagram. And my art is also available, guys. I just started. My art is also available to purchase on TeePublic. I use the same name, pencil_tiger. And there you can purchase my artwork. It's Kalashnikov related artwork. And you can go there and get it on shirts, coffee mugs, tumblers, laptop cases, cell phone cases, that kind of stuff. It's all there. So you guys can check it out. If you like anything, go ahead, purchase something. I get a little percentage from each purchase, so that helps out in my firearm cause. So as for the 3 subjects here, seriously, as civilians, I'm a civilian. I don't have access to a submachine gun, and I don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to buy a post 1986 submachine gun at the moment. So shotguns and PCCs for me, I think shotguns definitely. You should have a shotgun. I think they're overlooked, but they are a utilitarian. Like I said a while ago, it's a utilitarian firearm. It can do a lot of things. And as for the PCC, I think it's a great option to help. It's to help implement the pistol, right? Again, if you have a firearm that shares the same magazine, that will just strengthen your pistol, right? And then, of course, logistics, guys. Handgun cartridges are much more affordable, so you can shoot more and train more. And in most cases, you can the manual of arms are pretty much the same between a pistol caliber carbine and an intermediate cartridge platform. So absolutely, you should invest in both of those platforms.
All right, so just want to say thanks to UT74 for coming on. It's been a while since he's been on the stream, so it was nice to see him. He used to come out and shoot all the time out at the property, and that was many years ago. So it's good to see his face again, and be sure to check him out, guys. So first and foremost, covering the three weapons that we talked about: shotguns, submachine guns, and pistol caliber carbines. I think we're all in agreement. Like they are relevant. They do have their purpose. I don't think any one of us would grab that as our primary go-to rifle. However, when you look at it in a specific role, all right, they do have very specific applications, and they do very well at those very specific applications. So they are relevant in those specific roles. And I think that was probably the common consensus, whether it's, we're talking about military law enforcement or, civilian application. They definitely have their roles. And I am of the opinion that if you are a young man and let's say you live in an apartment, you're probably your very first firearm purchase, if you haven't bought one already, buy a goddamn shotgun. That's what I did as a 18-year-old freaking. Actually, no, I was 21 on active duty in the Marine Corps when they first let me out of the barracks and get my own apartment out in town, getting BAH. And unfortunately, I was stationed in Southern California, and buying a freaking gun, even back then, was like pulling teeth. And I bought a shotgun and for my apartment for self-defense in that apartment. So, that was my first purchase, as a young man on my own in the Marine Corps, living out in town. So I definitely think, if you're a young guy in an apartment, even in a house for that matter, like a shotgun is probably your first weapon. It's a little bit more forgiving in terms of range and, penetration and stuff like that. But yet it's absolutely freaking devastating and lethal in those CQB environments. So it's absolutely ideal. An AR platform is going to take a little bit more training. And if you don't have the necessary training, you probably shouldn't buy that rifle until you do. So, pistol caliber carbines absolutely have their purpose, and we discussed some of those purposes. So if you came in late, be sure to go back and watch those. Absolutely fun shooters, guys. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the topics we covered. And as far as my channel's concerned, let me talk about another guy's channel, Grunt Proof. Me and Jared have been doing the Sear Challenge. Episode 5 just ended. It was me as the survivor. Jared was the hunter. And episode 5 just ended, and that is the last episode where I'm the survivor. If you have not seen it yet, go check it out. It's an epic ending there. I'm not going to ruin it. You guys need to go watch it. So episode 6 will start with Jared becoming the survivor and me subsequently becoming the hunter. So it's a damn good series if you guys haven't started watching it yet. Pivoting back to my own channel, the Brent031 YouTube channel, I've got a bunch of shit coming down the pipe, guys. First and foremost, Winter Forge, my field training exercise video. It's going to be over an hour long, very intensive. I've been working on this sucker for like 3 freaking days. My ass is killing me from sitting in a chair editing, and I can't wait to be done with it so I can just post it and move on with my life. But it's a thorn in my ass right now, and I'm working on it. It's going to be a good one. So that one's coming out of pipe. I've also got some infantryman's guide videos in the works, some smaller, similar to the tools video, about that same time span. People seem to like, the length of those. So I'm going to continue with a couple more smaller topics. So those will be coming down the pipe. I just finished an interview with retired Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Stevens. He was a MARSOC Marine, also with Anglico, and just a absolute pipe hitter, retired Marine, and did a interview with warfighters with him this morning. So once I get done, editing that, I'll have that coming down the pipe as well. So that's pretty much all I got, fellas. Does anybody have any saved rounds?
Real quick. UT-74 is talking about his artsy side. He did this for me years ago.
Woo!
How cool is that, guys? On a T-shirt. I mean, this is. I never wear it because I like it so much, and I'm so excited I can break it out right now. She is super sexy with that folding stock. All about it. So anyway, yeah, for sure, check out his stuff, because he's if you like stuff like that, you're gonna like what he's got.
I also forgot to mention, guys, you can contact me on my Instagram channel. I also offer Fake-A-Lite services to polymer magazines. So if you have a KP9, Magpul, Glock mag, any polymer mag, I can actually refinish it and give it that Fake-A-Lite finish. So I don't have one near me right now. It's on my tack wall, but you can hit me up on my Instagram, and I can send you some samples of what it looks like. I just actually sold one of my Fake-A-Lite mags to a follower of mine because he wanted a 20 rounder, and I had a 20 rounder, and I sent it to him. So you can also, like I said, get those services if you need a Fake-A-Lite done to your polymer magazines. I'm not doing metal right now, just polymer.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know what he's talking about, if you have ever seen an AK-74 from like the 70s in the Soviets, that orange magazine, it's really iconic looking magazine. That's what he's talking about. So for those of you who don't know. In any event, great chat tonight, guys. Thanks to Les for coming up with this topic. There you go, right there. Hold on one second. Let me make you big. Boom. That's tight.
That looks amazing.
Yeah, that's real good work. All right. So that's it, guys. Are they still relevant? Yes, they are. Have a good night.